With the Damian Lillard trade rumors, Ben Simmons workout footage, and available stars being photoshopped into Lakers jerseys, it's safe to say that the NBA offseason is officially underway. Now is the time for teams to assess what went wrong last year and how to get better in the following year. By making the right trade, drafting the right player, or just resting and practicing, teams can really turn things around. We've seen some teams in shambles lose and lose and lose, only to figure something out in the offseason, and miraculously give their fans something to be excited about in the very next season. For this video, we'd like to go through some of the most drastic improvements that teams have performed in NBA history. If you like this content, please subscribe to Superb Sports Media. We are starting with the most recent instances, and we'll be throwing it back further as the video goes on. That being said, this first one on our list actually happened a bit long ago already, yet it was so impactful when it happened that we still all remember it today. I'm talking about the 2007 to 2008 Boston Celtics. This team still holds the largest season turnaround in NBA history, with an improvement of 42 wins. Before this season, all they had was Paul Pierce, a decent star player, but nowhere near enough to ascend to the heights of a championship run. No one saw that coming from Boston, especially after their 24-win season. In the offseason though, Danny Ainge made a ton of big swings and somehow got to trade for two other superstars in Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen. This big three were all elite in their own unique playstyles, and were all fed up with being the lone superstar carrying their lackluster team to no postseason success. Together, they combined all their powers to finally win an NBA championship. This moment popularized the idea of a super team. Many franchises still try to strike gold with this formula. What Boston achieved in these moves was historic and iconic. It sent shockwaves throughout the entire league when it happened, and we can still feel the effects of those today. Next, we have a team that turned things around with just one star player acquired in free agency. Well, the Phoenix Suns did also draft Steve Nash, and then proceeded to trade him for some future prospects to the Dallas Mavericks before he really broke out. Now, maybe it was some kind of apology, but in the year 2004, the Suns offered the now 30-year-old Nash a contract so large that the Dallas Mavericks could not match it. It all worked out when the assets they traded for years ago ended up developing into a very strong supporting cast. All they needed was the floor general and leader that they saw in Steve Nash. They were right. He immediately turned everything around. They won 33 more games, and it kickstarted the franchise's most successful era. It was a genius move that benefited everyone who was part of it. The Suns had the best record in the NBA. Steve Nash won 2 back-to-back MVPs. Coach Mike D'Antoni won Coach of the Year, and Brian Colangelo won Executive of the Year for making that one big move. Now, since we just talked about how the Suns improved from taking a star point guard, we have to bring up how they just let go of another of their star point guards in the years prior. The New Jersey Nets traded with them to acquire Jason Kidd. Instantly, their measly 26 wins from last year then doubled into 52 wins, the best record in the Eastern Conference. Because of this turnaround, Jason Kidd finished second in MVP voting as the clear difference maker. The Nets proved they were the real deal when they took all of this success all the way to the postseason, and even until the NBA Finals. And since then, this season has remained the peak of the Nets franchise. Now, to put this into perspective, imagine if the Charlotte Hornets from this year, with 27 wins, even more than the Nets, acquired a player and then ended up as the first seed in the East and in the NBA Finals the next year. How crazy would that be to witness? For number 4, we're going with 2 different teams because, well, they're both the San Antonio Spurs. Just at 2 ends of the same decade. In the 90s, there was no man more impactful to the San Antonio Spurs than David Robinson. The 1989 to 1990 season was when he finally started playing. But he was selected by the Spurs back in 1987 as the number 1 pick. they had to wait 2 years for him to finish his active duty in the Navy. I guess they knew it was all well worth the wait. The Admiral became the Rookie of the Year and led the team to the largest season turnaround ever at the time. They transformed a 21-win lottery team to a 56-win conference semifinals team. When a player who is that important to a team falls apart, so does everything around him. During the 96-97 season, David Robinson was sidelined due to injury, and the Spurs lost a whopping 62 games. This somehow ended up being the best thing to ever happen to the franchise, as it landed them with the number 1 pick in the draft for another generational big man. With Tim Duncan coming out of the gate as everything he was hyped to be, the Spurs formed the most elite front court the NBA had ever seen. Tim Duncan got to the first team All-NBA as a rookie, while the Admiral got to the second team All-NBA. Both of them were also in the second team for all defense. For their paired up big man dominance, they were nicknamed the Twin Towers, which was probably more tasteful in the 90s, I guess. They flipped their losses upside down from 62 to 26. Not only were their fans excited to be back to competing for a championship, but they saw that they had the foundational piece for a very bright future. Tim Duncan, the big fundamental, was such a floor raiser that for the next 20 years, the Spurs never even got a draft pick higher than the 20th pick and never missed the playoffs. They never needed another big season turnaround. Well, that is until now. Let's go back in time again. It's 1978. The most successful dynasty in North American team sports history had just ended. The Boston Celtics squeezed every ounce of greatness they could ask from their players. John Havlicek, the last man standing from the Bill Russell squad, is finally retiring. The Celtics need to breathe new life into this team. They need to acquire the next great player to build another dynasty around from scratch. Enter Larry Bird. Well, not yet. He's still in college. That didn't stop the Celtics from drafting him though, even if it did stop the other teams from doing so. This is why Larry Bird was drafted all the way down at the 6th pick, while being a generational talent. He wanted to graduate first, and that meant if a team drafted him that year, he wouldn't play for them for a whole year, and then the next year there would still be no assurance that he would sign with them. It was very risky business. Thankfully, the Boston Celtics had Red Auerbach pulling the strings as general manager. If there is anyone who can pull this off, it was him. Many consider Red the all-time greatest basketball mind off the court. On the court though, Larry was really the key to everything. The Celtics had the same core of guys that just won 29 games. But once Larry Bird was inserted, the team skyrocketed to a record of 61 wins to lead the entire NBA. Those teams that were too impatient to wait for Bird for only a year still just ended up being left in the dust. The new Celtics dynasty was being formed, standing over all but few competitors. A new NBA star was born in Larry Bird, who they called the Great White Hope, and his battles with the team rivals were must-see TV worldwide. Larry Bird didn't just turn around the Celtics franchise. This season turned around the entire NBA as we know it. In 1968, the league expanded, and the brand new Milwaukee Bucks team debuted with the worst record in the East. They won only 27 games, which was not actually that bad for an expansion team's first year in the league. What they did the next year, though, was something any bottom-dwelling team could only dream of. They improved by more than double their amount of wins, and finished with 56 of them, giving the team the second-best record in the entire NBA. In only the second year of their existence, the Milwaukee Bucks started competing on the highest level of basketball. How is this even possible? The answer lies in the 1969 NBA draft, with the flip of a coin. The Milwaukee Bucks got the rights to draft the greatest college player of all time, Louis Alcindor Jr. That was the name of the most hyped basketball project to that point, but we know him now as the legend named Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. The Bucks also somehow snared Bob the Greyhound Dandridge in the 4th round. He's also a Hall of Famer now, but at the time he was only the second best player on the team. Well, I guess it's not really fair to put anyone up next to Kareem. The Bucks ended up with 2 players on the all-rookie team, but Kareem was head and shoulders above anyone there. He not only won Rookie of the Year, but ended up in 3rd place for the MVP award. Kareem was already the 2nd-ranked scorer and 3rd-ranked rebounder in the league at the same time, while also differentiating himself from the other dominant bigs by leading in assists among all centers. This is arguably the greatest rookie season of all time. Despite the inexperience, they didn't stop on the big stage either. Kareem averaged 35 points and 17 rebounds in the playoffs. They only lost once they bumped into the eventual champions, the New York Knicks. As a bonus entry, I'd have to shout out the same Bucks team for improving greatly the very next season, when they traded for veteran Oscar Robertson, who became the final piece they needed for their championship run the very next year. This rapid rise from a championship within only 3 years of existence has been the fastest any expansion team has been able to do it in all of major pro sports. What a turnaround. A year before the Bucks made that big turn, the Baltimore Bullets made a similar move. Like with the Bucks, rebuilding through the draft showed to be a much more instantly successful option for these teams in the early decades of the NBA. The Bullets totally lucked out when they selected Wes Unseld at 2nd overall. He was an undersized center and not an amazing scorer, but at this point, we already know that doesn't stop you from being an all-time great center. Bill Russell's already proven that. Like Bill Russell, Wes changed the game with IQ, passing, defense, rebounding, and a bunch of intangible qualities. He immediately made a strong impact on his team. He did something inconceivable today when he won Rookie of the Year and MVP in the same season. He still remains the last player to ever do so. That's how much he changed that Baltimore team. They went from having the worst record in the East the previous season to having the best record in the entire league in 69. Nice. They went on to the playoffs where their hot streak was extinguished by a New York Knicks who they ended up battling 5 more times in a row in every following playoffs. In this 69 season though, the winner still ended up being Bill Russell's Celtics. It was his 11th and final ring before finally retiring. Maybe he saw someone worth passing the torch to. If you want some more information on that Baltimore Bullets and New York Knicks rivalry, check out the video we made on that. If you'd rather learn more about this Bill Russell fella, then maybe you should watch our rivalry video on him and Wilt Chamberlain. There are tons of more videos on NBA history on our channel otherwise. So that about wraps up our video. Do you think any team would make an unexpected leap from last year? Let us know in the comments below. The wilder the prediction, the better. Maybe this Wembanyama kid is as good as everyone says, and he repeats what the Spurs' #1 pick centers did in the 90s. Parity within the league is at its peak right now, and the teams have felt as volatile as ever with the superstars more openly demanding trades too. This all gives us more to look forward to in the upcoming season, but there will always be more to learn when we retrace these impactful events that ebb and flow across NBA history. For more of these videos that take a look back on sports history, subscribe to Superb Sports Media.